Welcome to the Pat White Show.
Well, on the evening of 4th of July, as you probably know, there was a shooting downtown. Kids, teenagers. 16-year-old kid was killed, and now two kids, one 16 and one 18, have now been charged with murder. Well, the concern is, what are we going to do about this? What can be done about this? Well, believe it or not, they're having the same problem down in Indianapolis. Same sort of shootings, kids shooting kids. Well, now the police chief down in Indianapolis says, we're going to go after the parents. And if we can prove that the parents knew the one young man down there who's charged with murder had the gun, then they can bring charges against the parent. This goes back to a situation up in Michigan where a young man went into a school with a gun, and the parents knew that something was going on, except they didn't do anything about it. Well, those parents were ultimately charged and went into court, went to a jury trial, and, they're now doing time in the Gray Bar Hotel. So, what are we going to do in Fort Wayne? Well, it turns out County Commissioner Ron Turpin, has decided to form an executive committee, call it whatever you want to call it. But what surprised me in that committee was they had the sheriff's department and all these various different agencies. But the one department that he didn't even mention, and apparently is not being included into this combo, is the police department. And that got me to wondering, this happened downtown Fort Wayne. This happened within the jurisdiction of the city of Fort Wayne, which means the city police. Why weren't they included into this confab that's being created by Commissioner Turpin? I don't know the answer to that. And frankly, there's probably a reason. I'm just not aware of what it is. Maybe they don't work together. I don't know. But you can't have a commission going in and getting things done. Let's change this and change that, unless you have the full city working with you. And if the city doesn't want to work with you, if you've chosen not to have the city work with you, then you've got a bigger problem. And ultimately, this is probably not going to work out, whatever your commission is planning on doing. So, where do we stand now? Well, now we have a commission that doesn't include the police department. Discussion about having some sort of curfew, which many say won't work. Kids won't go off the street. And looking for someone to charge, namely the parents. There are always going to be deadbeat parents, folks. That's Mother Nature. But charging them with a crime, if the parent or parents knew that this young man, this 18-year-old young man, had guns in the house and had guns to use, well, maybe you could charge the parent with something. But if you do that, remember, you're going to take that parent too and put the parent in jail. Are there other kids in this family? I don't know. I'm just saying that maybe you ought to think about this. Maybe you ought to decide what's the right thing to do, and if you've got the right people and the right organizations. I'm not saying what you're doing is imperfect, but almost everything is imperfect in one way, shape, or form. Not having the city involved in your commission strikes me as a little bit weird. I don't know why, and I don't know what happened, or I don't know what got you guys crisscrossed, but that needs to be solved, because everybody, and I mean everybody, has to come together and say, what can we do to stop this? And frankly, I'm not sure there's a way, because they can't figure out a way down in Indianapolis, a much bigger city, and we're not be able to find out how to do it here. How do we stop violence? That's a very good question. And how do we stop kids from killing each other? Even bigger question. I'm not sure anybody has the answers. Maybe someone will figure it out. But right now, my opinion is, if you don't have a father in the home, you've got a bad home. And that's been proven time and time again. Without parental supervision, then that child is going to look for someone else to be his father. And more often than not, it's someone in a gang. That's just the way it works, whether you like it or not. Parental supervision, that's the key. If you don't have that, then you're not going to win the battle. That's just the way it works, folks. just so you understand, I hope your commission works, but right now, till you figure out how to put families back together, it ain't going to happen. It just ain't going to happen. Well, in case you didn't know it, the NEA, National Education Association, that is the largest union of teachers in the United States. Okay? Teachers Union. Well, they just had their national conference in Portland, Oregon. It was a closed conference, so the media was not involved, and I was there to watch what was going on, but some people were able to smuggle out some information that was going on at the convention. And this is stuff you need to know, folks, because these are teachers teaching your children. One lady was interviewed, or she was on the podium. Her name was Ashley Crossman. She's the NEA Teacher of the Year for 2025. And at their conference, which was July the 4th, all right, she said that her job has become deeply political. She said it almost has been. She says, once I realized how deeply political our profession has always been, I knew I could no longer stay on the sidelines. Well, being political, this is what teachers are doing. Well, they had a bunch of resolutions that came out of this teachers NEA convention, July the 4th in Portland, Oregon. And one of the things they said was to defend against Trump's embrace of fascism, using the term, well, incorrectly, because they spelled it wrong, which is fine, their cause. But they're going after the Trump administration because they don't like him. Now, they're entitled to do that. It's America. You can speak out of whomever you want to. But the resolutions did not stop there. Here's one in particular. As you know, the President of the United States says we need to get rid of the Department of Education, which has been around since 1980, was put into force by Jimmy Carter, who needed the votes of the teachers to get himself elected. Well, ever since the Department of Education, well, education has gone down the rabbit hole. President Trump said, I want that division gone. I don't want any Department of Education. Turn it back to the states where it belongs. You don't have Washington, D.C. telling 50 states what to do. It's the job of the states. Correctly so. Well, anyway, so the resolution out of the NEA said the elimination of the Department of Education, quote, an illegal, anti-democratic, and racist attempt to destroy public education and privatize it at the interest of billionaires. Now, I'm not sure what billionaires are going to benefit by having education back to the states. They're calling it illegal, anti-democratic. That's the NAA, folks, just so you know. This is the union whose job it is to teach your children. Now, then another resolution they had that came out involving immigration. Take a listen to this. The immigration, quote, defend birthright citizenship and oppose the attempt to revert to pre-civil rights movement, Jim Crow, legal concepts of states' rights in order to deny citizenship to the children of immigrants. And the union went further, supporting students, quote, the right to dissent and organize against Trump policies and ICE raids and deportations. They're telling you they're going to utilize their kids to do this. Is this what you want your kids to do in school? I thought the job was reading, writing, and arithmetic. Nope. And here's another one. They passed a resolution out of their convention, the mass democratic movement against Trump's authoritarianism and violations of human rights, and further cementing the role of political activists in the system. Is this about education? No, it's about political activism. And just to show you what else is going on, it used to be a group called the Anti-Defense League, the JDL Anti-Defense League, would provide information to the NEA to use for teaching, explaining to people about the Holocaust, what happened. And it was tragic and it was terrible. Well, the NEA has now divorced the ADL. They want nothing to do with the ADL because the ADL is basically behind Israel. And now the NEA despises Israel because of the situation involving the Palestinians and in the Gaza Strip. So they have divorced the NEA and said, sorry, we want nothing to do with them. and have rejected them and their involvement. So let me give you one last thing. The person who basically is responsible for starting up education, he is the father of public education. His name was Horace Mann. Okay, remember that name, Horace Mann. Here's what he said. We who are engaged in the sacred cause of education are entitled to look upon all parents as having given hostages to our cause. You understand what he just said? You're giving hostages, your children, to their political cause. Horace Mann, father of education. So, want you to know what's going on right now? And there was a case down in Texas, if you hadn't heard about it. It was a case where the courts, well, it was called the Mahmoud versus Taylor. And whether to allow parents to opt out of education that was involved with gender ideology. And the court said, you don't have to hang around that stuff. You want to get away from it? It's your right. The NEA is upset about that ruling and said, no, that should be taught in schools. That's what we're learning. This is from the NEA. They just had their convention. And now you know what happened. And now you understand. Do you want NEA teachers teaching your children? Or do you want your children going to other schools? Well, now the Congress is moving to provide the ability for you to send your kids to the schools that you feel best fit your standards and your beliefs. Something to keep track of, folks. But now the NEA has had their official conference, their official meeting, and it was done in secret. And now the secret's out. And now you know what they're dealing with. They are an activist organization who have their kids, and they are going to indoctrinate them. Just so you know. And now you've been told. Well, if you've been following this show for any amount of time, you probably know I recently talked about the fact that Pam Bondi and the rest of the people in the White House trail, if you will, came out and said that there's nothing in the Epstein files. There's nothing there. There's no names. There's no nothing. And as far as they were concerned, the case was closed. Nothing's to be done. And somebody said, well, wait a minute. If there's no list of clients and nothing going on, Epstein is essentially, innocent for lack of a better term, then why is Ghislaine Maxwell, his chick, his lady friend, his connoisseur, Cavassier, call her whatever you want, why is she in prison for 20 years? What did she do? It's probably a good question. But right now, the White House says, Epstein, closed case, there's nothing there, there's nothing to see, don't look over here. Well, turns out the gentleman by the name of Sean Spicer, you may remember him. He was one of the first press secretaries for Donald Trump back, I think, around 2017, somewhere in that era. He was one of the first press secretaries. Well, he is now, he's out there doing a whole lot of stuff. He's got his own podcast, like many people do. And recently, back in March, I think it was around March 19th, one of his guests he had on the show was a gentleman by the name of Alan Dershowitz, Professor Alan Dershowitz, longtime attorney, highly known, highly respected individual attorney. I've followed him for many, many years myself because I like some of what he has to say and his wisdom. And he's got a podcast on TV himself. Well, anyway, Professor Dershowitz was on the Spicer's podcast back in March of 19th of this year. And he said something kind of interesting. And I'm going to quote him here. He said, I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. He was talking about the Epstein files on March 19th when he was on the Sean Spencer show. Now, most everybody ignored it and didn't think about it because that was March and they knew that stuff was coming. And Pam Bondi had said, oh, that stuff's on my desk. It's going to be released. It was all promised. And so it turns out she came out and said there's nothing there. So the whole thing was done, it was finished. And the White House is saying, forget about it. There's nothing there to look at. Well, Dershowitz, back in this March interview, said the list is being withheld in an effort to, quote, protect those involved with the Epstein crimes. So According to Dershowitz, he went on to say, I know the names of the people whose files are being suppressed in order to protect them, and that's wrong. He said, but the problem is he can't release it because he's under court orders not to say anything, and obviously following the court's orders. Now, you would think, well, maybe he can say, no, I don't. I'm going to get it out there. But, well, lawyers are lawyers, and they do what they do. But the whole point is this episode, this interview with Ellen Dershowitz was released originally in March 19th, and now it's been re-released. So people can see this where Professor Dershowitz says, there's more to hear than you think. And you know what? He may be correct because he's got an inside. He was involved with a whole lot of stuff. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you how much he's been involved over the years. Does anybody remember the OJ trial back in 1994? Well, Professor Dershowitz was on the OJ team. That tells you anything. Not that that's good or bad, but it's telling you what happened. So anyway, now we know. This interview has been re-released. And Ellen Dershowitz says, I know what's going on. Unfortunately, I'm restricted and I can't talk about it. But I know whose names are on there, and I know why they're on there. And I know why they're being protected. So, if he's right, which I don't know, the question is a good one to ask. Who's on that list and why? And why are they being protected? Is this the way the deep state works? Can't tell you. But I can tell you this. Maybe, just maybe, the files will be reopened. I can't guarantee that. But many people say the entire files have been deep sixed, put in a box, burned up, or, I don't know, buried somewhere like Jimmy Hoffa. Who knows? All I can tell you is Professor Dershowitz said he knows. And to tell you the truth, he may. Just my observation on a case that maybe is not dead as you might think. Well, for the most part, we have discussed politics and a lot of it, what's happening in the world, the good, the bad, the ugly. But now it's time for a science class. So welcome to Science 101. I have two particular topics for you in this particular class, and both of them are of great importance, so I suggest you pay attention and take notes because there will be a quiz. The first one, I'm going to show you a photograph. Now, this photograph is a gentleman by the name of Sir Brian May. That's right, he has been knighted by the court in England. He is now a Sir. Not only is he a Sir, but he is also a PhD in astrophysics. Now, obviously, that means he's a very smart man, quite learned, quite educated, and his opinion is trusted by many people, and he has some great pontifications, if you will. Well, it turns out that he and three of his colleagues made a postulation, and they postulated something very important that I think is worth consideration by all individuals, because we are all on this planet together, and I think we have to understand how our world operates and how we are in the grand scheme of the universe. Well, Mr. May, Dr. May, if you will, and his colleagues postulated a postulation that goes like this. 3 females with well-endowed posteriors were the cause of the Earth's rotation. Now think of that, ladies and gentlemen. Sir May has postulated with his colleagues that 3 well-endowed female posteriors were the cause of the world's rotation. Now, we can argue about the tilt of the Earth back and forth, science being what it is, how close we are to the sun, but actually the rotation of the Earth, which gives us day and night, according to Sir May, was as the result of 3 female posteriors, well-endowed posteriors nonetheless, and that is the reason for the rotation of the Earth. Now, you can write that down in your notebooks because I'm sure you will be tested on this. How many and what variety? So I'd like to have you put that in your notes, because that is one of the two famed documents, famed situations, postulations that we are discussing in today's Science 101. The second of which is something that has, many scientists in the world very confused and somewhat agitated. Because as you have probably heard, there's numerous earthquakes happening around the world as we speak, from the Pacific Rim to Asia to the Turkish area to the Middle East. All kinds of activities are happening around the world. Why is that happening? Here even in the United States, multiple sub-earthquakes are happening around Mount Rainier in Washington State. I mean, numerous tremors. Could something be going on with Mount Rainier along the lines of Mount St. Helens back in 1980? We don't know. But here's something we are wondering what's going on. Since the year 1590, scientists have been keeping track of what amounts to is what we call magnetic north. That is where your compass swings to. It's where airlines and airplanes rely upon knowing what north is to plot a course. You're out there in the desert, you're out there in the forest, lost. Your magnet tells you which way is north, which way is magnetic north. But it turns out that since 1590, the magnetic north, as you and I know it and our compass knows it, has been moving. That's right. Back around 1590, it was over there near what amounts to the European coast. You think of England, Norway, Sweden, up in that area there. And that's where the compass is pointing to, and you had your compass. But then you'll see the picture here. Notice, magnetic north has been moving, and it's been moving pretty steadily. And what once was, over there near Europe, has steadily reverted toward what is true north, true geographic north, the absolute top of the world, if you will. So magnetic north has been going here, there, and everywhere for the last, 300-400 years? It has been. And the latest one took it up near the North Pole, the absolute North Pole, in 2020. Now, what does that mean? That means the magnetic core, the iron core that exists inside of the world, the molten core, it's moving, shifting. It's altering its location within the sphere of the Earth. Could that be causing the potential earthquakes and the shifting of the fault lines in the United States and the world, all fault lines around the world? Could that be causing it? No one really knows. But right now, with the magnetic Earth moving and magnetic North moving, and the onset of what's going on with the multiple earthquakes, especially happening around places like Mount Rainier, could something be erupting soon? Could it happen? Could there be a major eruption around the world, or possibly even the United States? We don't know. Everybody's concerned and waiting. But now you know what's going on, folks. Sir Brian May's postulation, considered one of the most epic postulations in the history of man, because it deals with the rotation of the Earth and the movement of the magnetic north in all these hundreds of years, and now it has gone almost back near the geographic North Pole. Is something happening, or could be happening, in the world as we know it? That's the question, class. And those will be on your exam. I suggest you be ready. I don't know how many of you know about this, but Pete Hegseth is the defense secretary. Okay, you probably know it. But you probably also know that people have been beating up on him big time, saying he has no business being the defense secretary. He doesn't know anything. He's nothing more than a major in the military, and certainly is not qualified to be the defense secretary. I beg to differ if you look up in the past and see the people who've been the defense secretary and to see what their experience was. Look it up for yourself. You might be surprised. But anyway, that being said, recently at a press conference, Pete Hegseth came out and he laid down the law in no uncertain terms. And frankly, I think what he did was the right thing to do. And let me tell you why. Pete Hegseth says that, the problem we have in America right now, we are so bent on having great airplanes flying and great missiles flying and whatever we have to use to protect America. That's what we ought to be using. Well, there's a little war going on over in Ukraine that might beg to differ on that comment, and he's willing to admit it. Because here's what he said. He said, from now on, we want to explore as much as we can in every way, shape, or form we can, drones. That's right. Unmanned drones. He said, we want to learn everything we can about them. We're going to take these things off the shelf. Anybody from a captain to a colonel can start testing these things and finding out the right ones that'll work for the United States military. Now, that's pretty bold, don't you think? A captain to a colonel can get drones out, off-the-shelf drones, ones you can buy on Amazon? Test them out and see if they're good for military use? Why? Because the war in Ukraine has become a drone war. That's right, folks. You think, well, it's just airplanes shooting and dropping bombs on places and planes flying in, bombers. It ain't that. The war in Ukraine is now turned into a drone war. All kinds of drones. And as a matter of fact, there's companies out there, one company in Australia that's sending over drones in packages, 6-packs. You unfold them, put the rubber bands on them, put a bomb onto them, let them fly. They're kamikaze drones. They got little cameras in them, kind of like we have little cameras in drones now. And you have people wearing the headset thing, putting that on. They can steer these drones to wherever they want and hit whatever they're aiming at. And they can sit there and loiter for a while, look for the right target, fly in there, kill it. That's what's happening in the war in Ukraine. They are using drones like nothing you've ever seen. Well, now the Russians have decided, hey, let's go with those Iranian drones. The Iranians were sending them what is known as the Shahed 136. Now, these are engine powered, a gasoline engine. They're GPS controlled, so they have GPS in them, and they know where to look for and where to aim. And that's what Russia is using to attack Ukraine. They've been to Kyiv, the city, capital city, and these are not buzz bombs. These are nothing more than, drones full of explosives. They know where to hit, go in, drop down, and aim and hit. The war in Ukraine has turned out to be a drone war. And Pete Hegseth, the Department of Defense, said, hey, we need to get caught up with this or else we're going to get our butts kicked. And he's probably right, because more and more countries are developing their own drones. In some cases, very tiny little drones. Very tiny, but loaded with a particular explosive, and they can fly them around. They're like flies almost, like ants, flies, like mosquitoes. But these could go, bang, right in the head, explode, kill you. That's what's being worked on. That's what countries have. China's just announced one that looks like a fly. It's a drone. It's a intelligence drone to learn stuff. This is how we're getting down tiny stuff, little tiny itty bitty things that we can see and communicate. So now the Department of Defense is going to set all the rules aside. Anybody can check out drones, see what they work, see what works. And they could ultimately be adapted into the United States military, because we are finding out it ain't necessarily the planes flying, the missiles flying through the air. It's the unmanned drones. They can be put in and find exactly what they're looking for. Israel has already done this. Remember the particular attack they had in killing all those Iranian generals? A lot of that was done with flying drones. Just waiting for the time everything was right, they flew in and took care of the product and eliminated a whole bunch of Iranian generals. Drones are, the modern way of doing things. Unmanned, explosive laden, but they can do the job. And they can do the job and nobody sees them coming. That's what's happening, folks. Pete Hegseth did the right thing. Told the Department of Defense, to heck with the rules, to heck with the regulations and the red tape. We're going into drones, and we're getting it done chop chop. And that, my friends, I think is what a good Secretary of Defense is supposed to do. And Pete Hegseth is doing it. Well, if you're any fan of basketball, you'll know that the WNBA Women's All-Star Game is going to be held in Indianapolis this coming week. You go down to Indy and you look at the JW Marriott Hotel downtown. It's got the biggest sign on for Caitlin Clark I think they've ever produced on that hotel. It's huge. You go to the Indianapolis airport, there's a full basketball court in the center of the airport. Now, they put it up for the NBA game, but also now for the women's game. But the whole thing is led by one lady, Caitlin Clark. See, the way it works is that fans get to vote for the All-Star game. And everybody puts their vote in and sees who's number one, who's the best. Who's ever number one gets to choose their team, the people they want on their team. And the runner-up does what their team is. That's how you get your teams. So it's like pick up basketball. You know, I pick this person, I pick that person. Well, that's what they each did. They picked their people. And then at the end of the game, unheard of, and this is really weird, Caitlin Clark says, oh, by the way, I want to trade my coach. The coach was already assigned, and she said, I want that woman out, and I want somebody else in. Traded coaches, got somebody different. Why? Because that woman who was the coach of their team was the one who didn't want Caitlin Clark on the Olympic team. Payback? Who knows? All I can tell you is she didn't like the concept. She traded in, got what she wanted. Now, Caitlin Clark, let's talk about her for a second. Caitlin Clark is the biggest star in American sports, and she's a woman. That's right. Bigger than feminism, for crying out loud. Caitlin Clark is carrying an entire league that for the last 27 years has been losing its shirt financially and nobody cared about. She's carrying that league on her shoulders. You know, in the voting for the All-Star game 2 years ago, they had the vote. I didn't care about the women's basketball because who did, really, frankly. 2 years ago, the highest vote getter was a lady by the name of Asia Wilson. Highest vote getter for the fans. These are fans. Got 95,000 votes. Highest vote getter, got 95,000 votes. Caitlin Clark got 1.3 million. 2 years ago, Asia got 95,000. You multiply 95,000 by 10, you're still under Caitlin Clark. She is a phenom. She's bigger than the Tiger Woods, the Muhammad Ali's, the Michael Jordans, the Magic Johnson, the Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson. You know, she's bigger than all these people. And I remember watching this. I remember watching when Tiger Woods came on board in 1997 at the Masters. I sat there and went, whoa, who is this guy? I didn't follow golf that much, but I did when Tiger Woods was playing. And frankly, she has turned this league into something that's actually doing great. Now the players are demanding more money because, Caitlin Clark. You go down to Bainbridge Fieldhouse, it's sold out, 17,000 seats. Other basketball teams have to go to larger centers because she plays. When she was injured, the ratings on television dropped 55%. So she's getting star ratings, she's getting primetime ratings, all on her shoulders because she's doing something nobody else did. Trouble is, if you take a look at that All-Star voting, the players also get to vote on players. And, well, Caitlin, she was number one with the fans, and she was number two with the media. Now, as far as being a guard, because the players also get to vote, guess where they placed her as a guard in the WNBA? Number 9. Number 9. Because she's hated. Jackie Robinson, baseball was hated back when he came in. I wasn't old enough to know that, but I was old enough to see something in 1966. There was a little team in West Texas called Texas Western College. They had players, white players, black players, but the coach named Don Haskins decided to play the 5 black players in the NCAA championship game against the University of Kentucky Rups Runts. 5 black players against 5 white players. One of those white players was a guy named Pat Riley, guard for Kentucky. And Kentucky got beat 72-65. But all that year, when the Texas Western Miners were playing, there was hate going on like nothing you've ever seen. I don't think I ever saw any death threats, but I knew that people, they play on the road, people hated them. The rule used to be back in those days, you could play 3 black players at home, but you only played 2 on the road. Well, Don Haskins chose to play 5. And they broke open the NCAA for black players. That one game made black players, now they occupy 75% of the NBA, maybe more, because of what happened in 1966. But during that year, they were hated. Disney people made a movie of it called Glory Road. See it if you get a chance. The point being here is this. Caitlin Clark is a phenom like no one has ever seen in recent years. Until she came along, did I watch the WNBA? No. Did I care about the NBA? Not kidding. Now I'm a fan. Now I watch. Now I videotape things. Now I check the scores, say, hey, did the Fever win or not? Because that team is actually pretty cool. It used to be, say, well, basketball was cool, but when the whole slam dunk came back in, everybody can do it. You can stand there. Players are tall enough now, they can stand up, dunk it with standing on the floor. That's not in the WNBA. Their concept is a 3-pointer. And man, they've got 3-point artists. And that's thrilling. The crowd just blows up when they hit threes because they don't do dunking in the WNBA. I'm telling you all this because I want you to understand that game coming up this week is a pickup game. Caitlin Clark chose the players she wants. The other woman chose the players that she wants. But Caitlin Clark said at the very end, I want to trade coaches. The coach you guys have designated my team, I don't want. She doesn't want me. She didn't want me on the Olympic team. Give her the other folks, I'll take what you got. It's never been done before. Will it work out? I don't know. But I can tell you this. One little lady is now at the top of the food chain when it comes to sports. Her name is Caitlin Clark. And you know what? Maybe it's time a woman gets to the top of the food chain. She's really that good. And you know what? She's a pretty nice person. She actually gave 2 brand new super buses to her Iowa team so her ladies could travel in style on the bus. She donated a whole bunch of food and stuff down to the people flooded out down in Texas. Whole bunch of stuff. She's doing stuff you don't know about. She's not greedy. She's not flashy. She just does a job because that's what she's been doing since she was 4 years old, playing basketball. She knows how to do it. And now America's sitting up going, hey, pretty cool. A lady could lead the world like that. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with it. And I, for the one, applaud her. My opinion, and I'm sticking to it.